One of the most talked about ETFs on the market is SCHD, and I know what you're thinking. There's a lot of videos on SCHD, so we must see what is the big deal about SCHD. Well, first of all, SCHD is one of the best dividend ETFs on the market. It's got a great yield, it's got a great dividend growth rate, and it's helping people to create income so then they don't have to worry about the government supplying them with enough income when in retirement. Now, you may be thinking, what is some other great ETFs to kind of pair with SCHD to create a great two-fund portfolio? Well, that's why we're here today. In today's video, we are going to talk about 3 great ETFs to pair up with SCHD to make a great two-fund portfolio. Now, you may be young, like I am, and want some growth. You may be looking for maybe a core ETF like an S&P 500 ETF. Or you could be looking for maybe some more dividends and getting a different type of dividend ETF to add into that portfolio. Well, in today's video, we're going to try to answer these questions and try to help you to invest better. Hey guys, my name is Steve, and I run the Frugal Expat website, where we try to help people to save more, invest better, and travel more. And today's video, we're going to try to help you to invest better. Now, if you like this content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. And today we're going to be talking about some ETFs to make that great two-fund portfolio with SCHD. Now, let's just break down a little bit about SCHD. Now, SCHD is a dividend-focused ETF, and it is the Charles Schwab US 100 Equity ETF. So it's got a comprise of about 100 different holdings that have grown their dividends over the last 10 years. Now, SCHD does have a dividend growth rate of 11.79% over the last 5 years. It has been growing its dividend year upon year. It also has a great dividend yield of 3.6%. And if you're thinking about dividends, some of these dividend income stocks, they usually have a little bit less in yield. And SCHD now has a 3.6% yield. That's pretty good if you're thinking about it. I mean, it is hard to kind of pick and choose which dividend stock to pick. Why not pick SCHD and get 100 of them where they do it for you? Makes research easy. Now, one of the great things is it's got a performance of 11% annually over the last 10 years. And over the last 5 years, it's another 11%. I know what you're thinking. You can get more growth with a growth ETF like QQQ. Or maybe you're looking for more growth in like an S&P 500 ETF like VOO. Well, we're looking at dividend-focused ETFs, so that's SCHD. Now, if you're looking to add a little bit more growth or a little bit more dividends, that's why you're at this video. That's what's going to create a great two-fund portfolio to make your portfolio either grow or just create even more dividends. So today we're going to break down, like I said, 3 different ETFs that we're going to talk about. Now, these ETFs that we're going to talk about are going to have, I'm going to try to make them a less overlap. So when we're trying to make a great two-fund portfolio, we don't want too much of one thing. Like if you looked at VTI and VOO, those 2 ETFs overlap 87%. Well, I mean, you can just pick one and you'll be fine. So we're looking at ETFs that do not overlap too much with SCHD. Now, our first ETF that we're going to talk about is a broad market ETF. Now, when we're talking about broad market ETFs, we're going to look at ETFs that either track the S&P 500 or the total stock market. Now, since the SCHD does have more value companies, we're going to look at something that's got like large cap and maybe a blend of some growth companies. And that ETF is going to be VOO. Now, VOO tracks the S&P 500, and it is a great ETF to add to your portfolio. Now, there are some other great broad market ETFs, kind of like VTI, you got IVV, SBY, SPLG, and like I said, VOO. But we're going to talk about VOO. Now, VOO does only have a 7% overlap with SCHD, which makes it good because now you don't have too much overlap within your two-fund portfolio. And if we're trying to look at the expense ratio of VOO, you have an expense ratio of 0.03%, meaning it's going to cost you just $3 for every $10,000 invested. And you're going to get some of these top companies, like you're going to get Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, you're going to get Amazon, Tesla, you're going to get Berkshire Hathaway, Eli Lilly. These are some great companies that are going to help grow and kind of stabilize this portfolio. Now, if we look at the returns over the last couple of years, we can see that it's grown pretty well. In the last 10 years, it's done about 13% annually on an average. For the last 5 years, it's done about close to 14.5%, and that's pretty good. If you're looking at SCHD is done 11% in 10 years and 11% in 5 years, but VOO is giving it a little bit more growth and a little bit more technology into that two-fund portfolio, and that's a great thing if we're looking to grow our portfolio or even keep it stable. So a lot of people may be looking at VOO having it as a core part of their three-fund portfolio, but adding VOO to SCHD just gives it a little bit more oomph when we're looking at growing that portfolio. And we can see this if we backtest it against other portfolios. Now let's look at this performance overall. Now if we take a look at this portfolio, we're going to see that it underperforms slightly of the S&P 500. That's because SCHD is adding just a little bit more stability and a little bit more dividends instead of growth. And so it's just adding just a slightly little bit less. And we're talking about maybe minus 0.8% compared to the S&P 500. So that's not too bad. And we're looking at, a little bit extra growth. So that's a good thing. All right. So let's go on to our next ETF. Our next ETF is going to be a growth ETF. Now we have several great growth ETFs that we could add to SCHD to grow this portfolio. We have QQQM, which is like QQQ, but a little bit cheaper. We have VUG, VGT. We have SCHG. And today we're going to be talking about adding SCHD to SCHD to create a great two-fund portfolio. Now, I did a video about this just a couple weeks ago, and we'll put it up here or even in the description to help you guys out. But SCHG and SCHD will add a great portfolio. One's growth, one is dividends. So you have a little bit of stability with a little bit of growth. Now, SCHG is a great growth ETF. It's got about 229 different holdings, and right now it is tracking about the same as QQQ or QQQM. It's got an expense ratio of 0.04%, which is much cheaper than a lot of these other growth ETFs on the market. It also has grown about 36% in the last year. Its performance has been about 16.5% over the last 10 years and close to 20% over the last 5 years. And that is a good thing if you're looking to grow your money. Now, if we're looking at trying to kind of beat the S&P 500, having about 55% in, having about 50% in SCHD and 50% SCHD will beat the S&P 500, but just slightly. So, you are having that extra growth with the stability, and you are growing your portfolio. So if you're young and you're looking for like a high time horizon, plus you want some dividends, you can add these two dividends together and create a great two-fund portfolio. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking maybe you want maybe not as much growth, but you just want more dividends. Well, that's where it comes in our next type of portfolio, and that is a dividend-focused two-fund portfolio. Now, we're going to have SCHD, but we're going to add a dividend ETF to that. Now, there are several great dividend ETFs you could add to your portfolio. You have VYM, which is the high dividend yield ETF. You've got DGRO, which is the iShares high growth dividend ETF. You have VIG, which is the Vanguard dividend appreciation ETF, and you also have some others on this market. There are just so many great dividend ETFs that you could add to SCHD. Now, personally, when I'm looking at these, I want to do some backtracking and kind of take a look. So I looked at DGRO and VIG to see which one would be kind of the best to go with SCHD. And I picked VIG in the long run. Now, DGRO and VIG do have some great characteristics. VIG does have a better dividend growth rate compared to DGRO in the long term. Now, DGRO does have a better dividend yield of like 2.3%, while VIG has a dividend yield of about 1.7%. Now, that dividend yield is not so good, but their dividend appreciation, dividend growth is a lot better than DGRO. And in the long term, you're talking about an appreciation of value. I mean, VIG is growing annually about 11.5% compared to DGRO, and that's just adding a little bit more capital appreciation to the SCHD. Now, we're looking at fund overlap. VIG and SCHD only has a fund overlap of 11%. Now, that's great news to you because you don't want just the same, basically, you don't want a carbon copy of SCHD because you can just have SCHD. So VIG is going to have Apple and Microsoft. It's going to have Broadcom. It's going to have some other companies that will create a little bit more appreciation, but also as dividends. I mean, who knew that Microsoft's been growing their dividends year upon year for the last 10 years? That is a great company. Plus, Apple is doing the same thing. Now, their dividend yields are not as high as maybe a Coca-Cola or PepsiCo or a Home Depot, but it gives you a little bit more something else, a little bit more capital growth. So when we add these two funds together, we're creating a dynamic duo of two great dividend ETFs to make a great two-fund portfolio. Now, at the end of this video, we're looking at a couple great dividend ETF portfolios to kind of add to the SCHD. We've got the core one with the broad market. That would be like VOO and SCHD. We're looking at growth one with SCHG and SCHD. We're also looking at a dividend focused two-fund portfolio, which is a VIG and SCHD. Now, if you like any of those, well, that's a great way to create a two-fund portfolio. Now, if you don't, or you have some suggestions, leave those in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions. I want to see what you think is a great ETF to team up with SCHD. Now, those are just a little bit of my thoughts and opinions, and I hope you gained a little bit of value out of this. Now, if you're looking for a great two-fund portfolio, I'm going to leave right here. It's going to be SCHG and SCHD. So take a look at this video and let me know. Is there another great ETF to team up with SCHD? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.